and welcome to Crafts and Crime. I'm Amy.
I'm Elaine.
And as always, we got the craft and the crime.
Mm-hmm.
So
I finished 10 minutes ago.
Oh, you're
right
like
before I
me
came
the
over.
last time. Yeah. I know. I finished last night and I actually took my husband's advice and just typed it as I watched it because I like handwriting it out. I know you read it off your handwritten notes. And what I was doing was I was jotting down my notes and, abbreviating stuff or whatever. And then I would, still like if I'm watching something, pause it a million times. If I'm listening to something, pause it a million times. And then I would type up my notes. And so this time, because Jack was like, why don't you just type it up as you watch it? I'm like, shut up, that's a good idea, but I don't want to. I like handwriting it.
Yeah.
So then yesterday afternoon, I was like, I'm going to do my crime and see. Because usually what I do is like over 2 days. Like I'd start one day and finish the next day. So I figured I'd be finishing today. No, I finished yesterday because I set it up differently because I started recording. I started my case when Jack came home he had to go get the van smogged and all of that. And so he wanted to watch TV. I didn't want to hog the TV, with my true crime stuff. And so I was like, oh, I'll just put my headphones in and listen to it, and it was convenient because I could like pause it on my AirPods, and so I could pause it with like just squeezing my headphone, and I just typed it up, and then if there was something that I saw later or like that was clarified later, I was able to like go back and like add it in, and so that's my new way of doing it. Now you guys know the process.
Yeah. I used to type it or handwrite it all down, and the way that I take my notes is I leave out like ands, does. I leave out all that and then I would type it up onto my phone. So I would hold it in my hand because again, the same thing, like both of our husbands aren't into this shit.
No, but Jack listens to us.
Yeah, he's
like, it just pops on his next list and he'll listen to it.
He'll try to, but he's like always on the phone and stuff at work, so he really can't. He doesn't have a lot of time, but so I'm always doing it on off family hours, which is really late or really early in the morning. And I was on the phone with a good friend last night for a long time, and so I was just like, okay, well, I'll just finish in the morning because I really didn't have a lot left to do, and I didn't. But then the cat was sick all morning, and then so I like just finished up right before I came over, but it's fine.
And we're recording early. Usually we record later, but there's like a few things that I have going on later, and so I'm like, we gotta go like get this done early.
It is weird how early it is.
I know. It's not even that early. It's noon, but usually we record when Jack gets home so he can keep the kids quiet. So if you hear kids screaming in the background,
and then because
apologize.
of his older schedule, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. So now we're like a few hours early.
So it's just different. So now that his work schedule is all weird, he would usually come home and then watch the kids, and we'd record, and then by that time it's like almost dinner time by the time we're done. So
dang it, sorry, I was looking at the picture of the egg yolk. The bullseye is covered perfectly by the shine through the window, but it was absolutely there.
No, we're dealing with a rooster problem right now.
Too many. Ridiculous. Like what the heck.
We've had
5
Bambi, Fluffy Cheeks,
Fluffy Cheeks, Belial, and the first one we had to get rid of.
Yeah, we've had 5 roosters. I forgot. Yeah. So we've
Fancy
had 5.
Neck.
That's what it was. We had Fancy Neck, Fluffy Cheeks. So Fancy Neck was first. We knew he was because he was older. Belial we knew, but we kept him around because he fertilized all the eggs that we put in my incubator.
So the Americana can lay the babies that'll come from the Americana should be olive eggers.
Yeah. And
so,
then,
but he got rehomed.
And then Feline, Fluffy Cheeks, and Bambi are what we have now. Your Feline, my Fluffy Cheeks, and Bambi. And so I have 2 roosters. Well, no, I have 1 now. I got rid of the other one. And so we each have
to get rid of each of our last ones.
Yeah, so we have posts up and like free. Come and get them.
It's like that. Take my wife, please. It's like take my Roo, please.
And people do. I mean,
and they're so like I'm not sure about is Fluffy Cheeks nice enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quiet enough. That's why I'm like, I hear
Feline, my girl boy is so loud, but is the sweetest. And I'm heartbroken because I know
he's big.
He's really big and really, really sweet. And I love his bright yellow feet because they look like galoshes. And I'm so sad.
I know. Sucks.
So at least he's nice, because that definitely gets them picked up, is when they're like literally he'll let me hold him.
Like Belial that attacked me.
I still think it was just because there were 3 of them in there.
Probably because I had 3 roosters. And
we had no idea. Well, we kind of thought maybe...
No, we knew Belial was.
No, I meant like maybe we thought Bambi kind of was, but he was so young that we figured
Feline wasn't in there. It was just Bambi.
Fluffy cheeks and Belial.
It was so... Yeah, I was messing with the quail. I was trying to see if they were, putting males and females, so leg bands on them. And he just attacked me. I think I talked about it on another episode, so I'm kind of glad he's gone. And he was loud. And then...
he was my baby.
Yeah.
But now he's somebody else's baby.
Bambi was very loud, and he kept getting that collar off. So
yeah,
it's called a no crow collar, but they still crow. It's just muffled because they can't like extend their voice. Like
they can't take the huge breath that they need to take. That's when you see, like, if you ever watch a video, the roosters. Well, I mean, obviously I know you know, but everybody else, they have to puff their chest out and kind of throw their head back because they have to take a huge breath
and then let it out, but they can't get enough in with this.
It's pushed on, but they can still totally eat. And as long as you're a good owner, you'll check the crop and you'll feel that it's good, and we do. So some people think it's like really cruel to do, but I'm like, they can do everything.
Yeah.
They eat, they drink, they just can't scream.
Yeah, they can't scream. They can still,
And as long as you kind of adjust it, the feathers come in.
Yeah, and I could fit a finger, a fingertip in there.
Totally fine. And they can still crow.
Yep, they still crow, and they still do their jobs as roosters. So.
And it's loud like normal. Yeah. It's just not as loud.
Yeah, but, Bambi kept getting his off. That's crazy. It woke me up one morning and I was like, that's it, he's got to go. So... got rid of him, but it's hard to get rid of roosters. But we have a few. And then my quail and chickens were hatching this weekend. The last of the chickens hatched, and my quail keep dying, and my babies that just hatched, and so I only have, out of like 17, I only have 8 left, and I have no idea why. The temperature is perfect. They have the adequate amount of food and water. They were all kind of tiny. I don't know. It's just so weird. So I was losing a lot. I didn't lose any today, but over the past couple days I kept losing them. So we put a bunch of quail eggs in the incubator and more chicken eggs. I know. I was like, well, let's just put a few more in, even though I have more chicks out there. But I think a lot of them are roosters. But that's the thing, is like, out of each of our, how many was that? That was 5 roosters and 4 hens. That's it. All I'm left with is 2 hens, and you have 2 hens. So out of 9, more than half were roosters. So I'm kind of thinking the same thing, where like I think I have like 8 chicks in the garage, and probably more than half of them are roosters. I don't know. So we're going to hatch those. Those should be in like a few weeks. So I'm excited. And
I'm not going to be here.
Oh, that's right. We did not time that correctly.
Every time. The first batch, I was at Disneyland with my mom and daughter, and I missed kind of it. And then this time I'm going to miss the second with the blue ones again.
I know.
It's okay. We're not done.
No.
We're never done.
No.
It never ends. The chicken math never stops.
I know, it's hard to just be like, okay, no more, maybe a few more. But that's what I was going to tell you, and I was like, I'll talk about it on the podcast. Okay. So I usually, with my quail eggs, I'll hard boil them, like the quail eggs we eat, not like hard boil the babies. No.
Oh no.
So I usually just hard boil the quail eggs.
Sure, that's a delicacy somewhere.
Oh yeah. And Lily will pop them like M&Ms. She's just constantly like, I want another quail egg. And so today I was hungry, and I was like, you know what? I have my quail egg scissors, which is like the last episode, I think, was scissors. I can't keep it straight. Yeah, it was.
We do so many.
Yeah. So on the scissors episode where I talked about the quail scissors, well, these were cheap ones off Temu, and the amount of little tiny eggshells, like the itty bitty bits that ended up, I swear I have like an eggshell little tiny bit stuck in my throat, where it like scratches it and you're convinced like it's right there.
Yeah, because it irritates. And you have a little irritation.
Yeah, so I'm like, I need better.
Got to drink something nice and hot, even though it's a fucking billion degrees. It's supposed to be like 106 today.
Yeah. I don't drink anything hot. I made that mistake yesterday when I had that ramen.
It was so good though.
Like, I'm so hot. But yeah, I was hungry. So I made the quail eggs, and they were so yummy. And I'm sure that's going to keep me full for a while. But now I'm like convinced I have a little eggshell stuck in my throat. It's like right here. So, anyways, talking about chickens again.
Forever. Crafts, crimes, and chickens. If you know, you know. We don't even have to. We don't
need
even
to
have
make that into a bumper sticker.
We totally will.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
I
did
do it.
Yeah, I did do our QR code window decal. And if you are on Patreon, you get one for free. So,
yay!
Sign up on Patreon. Follow us. Listen to us. It's a lot of fun over there. Okay, so do you have the craft?
Yes.
Of course you do.
I bought the craft.
Okay. I'm ready.
My topic is actually really interesting because I found it probably, I was like 19 or 20.
Okay.
And I remember just being like on Amazon looking at different like mixed media.
Mm-hmm.
And this popped up, and I'd never heard of it in my life. So I've been hanging on to it in the back of my head, but never looked into it.
Oh, really?
Never got the book. Had no idea what it was. It just looked cool.
Okay. I like those kind of crafts. I'm like, what is this?
So this is encaustic painting.
Encaustic?
Yes.
Like Caustic?
Yeah. N-E-N.
Oh,
yep.
encaustic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was thinking
encaustic.
Encaustic. Okay.
So encaustic paint is one of course, we always say like, it's one of the oldest ever. Mm-hmm. It's one of the oldest forms of painting.
Okay.
It's a media.
Okay.
And it was created by the ancient Greeks, of course, over 3,000 years ago. And it was the Greek word for it was enkaustikos probably, and it means to burn in.
Okay.
They used this medium. It was a wax, and you had to heat it in a charcoal burning fire, and because it had to stay hot and warm, it had to stay liquid because it's wax.
Okay.
And they would use it to highlight sculptures that were around the palace, around town, and they would use it as an unpigmented version as like a caulking or a chinking for buildings and boat structures, but because it's wax, it would make it waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also, the architectural aspect. It was used for waterproofing materials, and it was used for paintings and murals. So it had like a multi-facet of uses.
Okay.
During the Hellenistic period of Greece, which was the time period from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC to the death of Cleopatra the Seventh, which is the Cleopatra we know, in 30 BC, Egypt had picked up the art in that time. In the Hellenistic period, they had picked it up.
Okay.
And so the most well-known encaustic painting from that time frame were these super realistic Fayum mummy portraits in Egypt. And these were like a shroud cloth painted with their likeness to cover their body during like what we consider in modern times to be like a funeral or memorial.
I was kind of picturing that. Yeah.
So they lay it over their body, and it's like for when they go to the afterlife, like this is what they look like. So they get to take that figure with them, not their like rotten mummy body, because they believe you're going over. So I think that also helped it.
Yeah.
And those will be the images when this episode comes out on Instagram, because they're still in existence in museums.
That's
this
cool.
wax has held up through the test of time, but it had to be done on a solid surface, because flimsy types of materials, it's gonna bend, flex, bow, and crack. So these are always it's surprising that it stayed so well on this material, because throughout history it's been as paintings on walls.
Yeah.
And so this held up, and they were... I'm sorry?
No, I was going to ask a question. Was this used like with King Tut? Or no?
I'm not sure. I have to. Oh no,
it's okay.
I have to.
Our headphones are still messed up. I haven't ordered it yet.
It's coming.
I know, tomorrow.
So I'm not sure.
Well, the only reason because I'm trying to picture it, and we went to the King Tut exhibit out in LA when it made its way out here, and I know they had. I'm pretty sure there was paintings on fabric still, and I'm wondering if it's the same thing. But I'm trying to picture. Fast. Yeah, I'm just trying to picture in my head, and I'm trying to remember the exhibit. But I mean, Lincoln was an infant then, so he was difficult. And so I didn't really get to see as much as I wanted to see, because when Lincoln wasn't a baby, he had colic and stuff, so I was just trying to keep him quiet in an exhibit. But it was the one that you walk through. They had a little show for you to watch to prep you to go into the exhibit, and they had all of these amazing artifacts, and I'm trying to remember if any of them were probably with that caustic painting or not. I mean, it's not a big deal. We can.
I'm just I'm just listening to you, and I was I can look. Yeah, I will keep looking, but I'm not sure because I don't know what year he lived in. So
I can't remember either. Yeah, because I'm when you said Cleopatra, I'm okay, well, I'm thinking Egyptian time, and then I'm well, then there's King Tut, and I'm I kind of went there, and I can't remember.
I saw that too. I believe it was at. Was it at the California Academy of Sciences up north? I'm not sure.
This was at the place next to the museum, the Natural History Museum. What's it called? The California Science Center.
That's funny. Both of those have such similar names, but it's northern and southern. It's probably just the northern branch and the southern branch.
Yeah, because it's the Natural History Museum, and then you just walk next door.
Yeah, which is crazy because I'd never been there.
There's the California Science Center, and that's where they have the Endeavour shuttle. And,
okay.
So you can
must
see
be
that.
Huge.
Yeah, I think they're. Anyways, so off topic, but yeah, I was just thinking about the King Tut exhibit when we went there about 5 years ago.
I will look.
Yeah,
and I will update.
Yeah, just curious.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I know, asking all the questions,
exactly,
finding all the answers.
So, of course, Pliny the Elder. He wrote about encaustic wax paint in the 1st century CE. All those times are different because they changed them all, and it's crazy.
I know, it's BC, CE,
BCE. It's also because it's faith versus non-faith, because it's before Christ. I don't even think it's before Christ existed, but the BCE, they changed. I know. I have to Google it. I forgot.
That's where I get mixed up too. I was not good at history.
No, I didn't like it. So I like it now, but I didn't then.
Ugh.
Oh, farts. It's because I tucked it under my leg.
It's this cord. We're really struggling today. Sorry.
So he wrote about these Roman portraits and how there was a trend of Roman aristocrats having these encaustic paintings in their house as murals. And so it suggested that it did go through a time of popularity where people were seeking it out, and maybe it was it's always expensive.
Yeah.
All of these things we talk about, it's it comes from rich people, and then they're I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
So after the fall of the Roman Empire, encaustic paint fell too, and it was kind of those ancient heating techniques. There was no replacement. It was too much, and they had already come up with other types of paint at this point. That constant fire was laborious, and without really being able to paint it onto a canvas frame, it always had to be on a slate or on wood or on a wall. Those are not light. You can't travel with it, when people would move. So it kind of went away.
Okay.
And during Renaissance times, it was mostly abandoned by then, and they had started using tempera paint, which is still something we totally use now, and it's non-toxic because the binding base is egg whites, which is why it smells funny. And then there was fresco paint, which was a water-based pigment that had to be applied on fresh plaster.
Oh, okay.
Because the plaster was going to absorb that pigment. If you ever get chalk wet and you just watch it yeah. And so the plaster would absorb that pigment and therefore they could then seal it because they had a lot of different glazes and lacquers, and they could seal that and it would last forever. And you can still go and see that stuff out over there, that it still exists. So, and oil paintings, of course, that's been around forever.
Yeah. Bob Ross with his oil paintings.
So precious.
I know.
So, some artists during that time, Luca Cranach and Andrea Mantegna, continued to experiment with the use of encaustic paints through the Renaissance, but again, it just kept falling away because there was no electricity, so they're not like we could just put it on a burner and keep it warm. It was, as soon as this paint cools, you can't use it. It has to be hot. So
that's so weird.
I know, right? So when we get to the 18th century, archaeologists had started looking into the process and the formulation, because we've always been curious, so they're like, what is this? It's the only one we can't find out. And I purposely left out this, like, what it's made of for what I'm going to get into.
Oh, okay.
So they started like taking the studies, smells, textures of all of these things, because it's the 18th century, we don't have a ton of scientific resources yet, and knowing binding agents, because oil paint's been around forever. Its base is a linseed oil, and I do wonder what it was back then, but I think it's always been one of these type of liquid rosins. When it dries, it turns into a lacquer. It just takes forever. So they've been, between the things they already knew, they're starting to take in-depth experiments, and they're studying, and they're trying to recreate it. Because they were able to go to the walls of Herculaneum and Pompeii, when they cleared it, and they discovered through that atrocity, the walls were preserved with their encaustic paint.
Oh.
And they were like, what the heck? And so I'll have pictures of that too. It's crazy. They're so beautiful. It's like unbelievable. It's just, it was lava.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it was probably because the ash encased it enough to like keep it blocked and cooled. It like baked on is all I can think of. So Europe quickly had come back to the beauty and of this medium. And so some artists had, so this is still the 18th century, and so a bunch of famous artists had started pulling it together and exhibiting works in France during this time. But by the mid 19th century, it still wasn't popular. The recipe had essentially been lost, and it was kind of just practicing and trying to see what came close to it, but they were never identical. It was never like Goldilocks. It was never perfect. I say that like the poem, this one's too hot, this one's too cold. So it was never right. It was never perfect at that point. And again, no modern heating. So it still sucked. And I'm thinking probably to do these experiments, you got to keep a fire burning too. It's like and waste of materials. It's not, all these things, they matter. So the popularity never rose again. But then in the 1950s, an art student named Jose Cuny started to try to recreate this recipe. He had a very well-respected friend who was a chemist, and so they went to the Herculaneum and Pompeii and studied and kept going. And Jose kind of, he got some stuff that he thought was pretty close. He started pulling together a formula he thought was pretty close, but it still wasn't just right. So at this point, it's already been almost 100 years since someone has really perfected it, and his is still unmanageable. But he really wanted to keep going. This was something he like changed his whole path of his life, was to recreate this as part of the art world again, because it was what he loved. You just find that thing, and that's how, like, there's entomologists who only study mosquitoes because they just find it, and niche. And that was what he wanted to do. So he kept improving his paint recipe, and in 1962 he finally figured out what he thought was the perfect recipe. It was identical. He thought it was exact. He's really excited, and he goes to the scientific community and he's like, look what I did, look what I found. I've recreated this. Like, it's history. It's and it's archaeology. Look at what I did. And it was crickets. They didn't care. It was like,
really?
Whatever. Yeah. It just wasn't that important.
And
the only thing I can think of is because like in 62, like it was, the art was not a huge focus. Like, art was coming forward, but you know, the problem that's starting is like Vietnam is ramping up and it's coming.
The timing's
and,
just
and
off.
I think that's probably part of what
that can make sense.
Had make that happen. And so it's really sad. And he actually he lost the heart for it. He stopped pursuing it, but he did continue painting with encaustics. In the early 90s, his sons Jorge and Pedro took up his work to continue their father's legacy.
Oh, okay.
And he's still alive, but they wanted to make sure that all the work he did for most of his life was appreciated by the art community. So they set out to prove that he was right, that his formula was correct.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so they started a chemical study of the Roman wall paintings. They actually went and were able to get samples, took the chips, and sent those samples off to 2 separate labs to see what was going to come back, like 2 separate opinions. And it was all done here in the USA. And both studies proved that Jose had created and crafted nearly an identical match.
Wow, that's cool.
Basically, the whole thing is beeswax in a type of tree resin called damar that comes from the family of the Dipterocarpaceae. Dipterocarpaceae trees from Asia.
Oh.
So that to me just added this like most amazing element of like they were like trading and importing these rosins. And the thing is, obviously it's not a secret because you can buy the encaustic blocks and you heat them on a griddle. It's crazy, and people still do it.
That's cool.
And the thing that I love the most is it's so sad and messed up, but like it's so simple. It's the same thing with its pigment, beeswax, and this tree resin. Yeah. And it's just like oil painting, pigment and linseed oil. And that's basically it. And how many things did he have to go through? How much did he have to do? And it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so simple. Like, you're inventing something essentially. Yeah. How many things did he have to test until that point? From what place? There's not a ton of information. I just find the whole thing fascinating, but it is water soluble, so like in the process of like cleanup they just wet it, hot water, wipe it up, you know.
That's crazy.
And it's still a popular thing today. And Jose Cuny is still alive.
Oh yes.
And he's old, and he still lives in Spain.
At least he knows he was right.
Yes, he was right, and he's still painting, and that's thanks to him, this amazing medium. Like, the best part is, imagine like super thick oil paint, how you have like texture and bumps and stuff. Your brain says, how does somebody paint with wax? And I still can't. It's so strange because these paintings are gorgeous and they look like it could have been done with any kind of paint. Yeah. And it's so strange. And one of the videos that I watched that was talking about Jose Cuny, it shows him painting, and it's just weird because it's very thin. It's like it's buildable, and I think that's what it is you're just building a layer and a layer and a layer and a layer, and you can make it super thick and then carve it down. Yeah. So you can make a shape. It's crazy. It's beautiful. Cool. And it's so strange. It's just wax. Yeah. And now I'm like, wax and resin didn't melt in Pompeii. Wax. It's just so crazy.
Well, maybe because
beeswax is pretty tough when it's solid, though. It has kind of a high melting point. Does. But maybe.
Still,
yeah, it's crazy. It's magic paint
covered by ash.
That's what I'm thinking.
So
it's
it just
had to.
The ash
but the
wasn't
ash was
hot
it was
enough.
really
well,
hot.
I know it was hot,
it killed
not
everybody.
Hot enough.
I guess.
Well, it suffocated everybody.
I'm guessing is it like the.
Because, like, think about when we have wildfires out here, the ash, like, it's not hot when it touches you.
Yeah.
And Pompeii, I don't know. I don't think it was that hot because, I don't know. But, wow.
It's so weird.
It is.
And it's funny because the original, I don't have any fun facts, but one of the things I was listening to is their initial, like, findings way back in the day. They thought one of the ingredients was soap.
Oh,
so I'm guessing. I think when I looked up the kind of trees they look really similar to rubber trees.
Oh,
and I'm thinking because rubber trees give out like it. I think shea. I think the shea butter comes from a type of rubber tree because if you have a latex allergy, you could be allergic to shea butter and not realize it. And so my brain goes, okay, well, if it's a rubber tree, the saponins could be really high. My brain goes like a million places. So it's just, I'm sorry. I feel like there's information left out, but it's just.
That's fine. This is a good overview. And it's like we were talking about running out of, like crafts and stuff. It's like, well, we will totally revisit with more information as it's like questions like now that like when I was asking earlier.
I'll go back and I'll look at it again.
Yeah, that'll be.
Because I didn't think about it. And so it's like, oh, okay, I can go back and fill in all this stuff I forgot.
Yeah. So, wow, good job. That was interesting.
Thanks.
I had no idea.
I was really struggling with what craft I was going to do. I kept thinking, and my brain just went, hey, remember that book you saw like 20 years ago? And of course, never did it because you were like, I'm totally going to do this.
Mm-hmm. But that's our problem with all the crafty stuff. It's like, oh, I can try that. I want to try that. I want to do that.
And then we're good at it.
I know.
Usually.
Yeah. And then it's like, crap. Now we got like
$500 in materials, and 2 weeks later, I'm done.
Yeah. And that's why you have an entire craft room.
Yes.
Yeah. Lucky. Like, I don't have.
It's also a cat box.
It is. It
so
is.
Rude.
The cat room /
it's
craft room.
Cat craft room.
Yeah. So, anyways, so I guess I'll bring it down.
Of course.
I know. One of us has to do it. And I will say that this is going to be a long one. It's the only reason I'm saying that is because I typed up a lot more than I usually do. There was just a lot of crazy information that I found. So, just buckle up, be prepared. So this is the disappearance of Kelly Bullwinkle.
Okay.
And this really shocked me in a lot of ways, and you'll see why as we go through, because it is very, very close to home for us. It takes place in Redlands, California.
Oh, God.
I know. So as I'm watching this show, I'm like, oh my gosh, I know where that is.
Yeah.
I know where that is because, it's like we live out in this area and in Redlands, there's, you just know a lot of these places. So you'll get it. So this takes place in Redlands, California, September 15th, 2003. So not that long ago. This was like 20 years ago, right? Yeah, 20 years ago. Like, what year is it?
Yeah.
So, okay. So Laura Williams was gone on vacation, and she comes home, and she immediately can see that something's wrong. Her roommate, 18-year-old Kelly Bullwinkle, is missing. And Kelly's dog, Blaze, was alone in the house. And Kelly noticed that the dog had not been fed or given his insulin.
Oh, gosh.
So he was like sick. He did not look good. So she knew right away something's wrong.
Yeah, like she would never not do that.
Yeah. And Kelly would have to like feed the dog twice a day, or the insulin, give the insulin twice a day. So she just knew like the dog's in bad shape. This is not good. Yeah. And so Laura immediately files a missing persons report with the Redlands Police Department.
Oh, so weird.
And it is weird when you're hearing something where like Like, I see Redlands PD all the time, and all these cities around us, they're kind of all over. I bet you we could drive around the corner and see them parked over there, by the hospital and stuff. So she, files the missing persons report, and she was just like, this is out of character. Like, they would not leave, or she would not leave her dog in this state. Yeah. And so days continue to go by without any sign of Kelly. So detectives need to look at, like, who may have talked to Kelly last. So Laura played the answering machine messages, because remember, this is 2003.
Yeah.
So the message was from one of her friends, Kinsey Nordman. And Laura said that she knew to call Kinsey because her and Kelly were, like, best friends. So she's like, she probably knows where Kelly, like, was, or what's going on. So when detectives talked to Kinsey, she told detectives that she had spent the evening with her the night before she disappeared. So she's saying Friday. She hung out with her. She said that she left Kelly at home. And so detectives then scour the house to see if they could find any evidence of foul play. And they don't find anything. Nothing is missing. So they're like, hey, let's just start to gather fingerprints from the house to see if they could see, like, if someone was there that shouldn't be there.
Which is so crazy to me, because then, like, think of our houses.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Of the amount of fingerprints around the house. But I think it's like the go-to. It's the go-tos, the doorknob, the TV remote, the doorways, that kind of thing. And but still, a lot. So light crazy. Switches, toilet flusher thingy, so.
The doorbell with like 9 million delivery drivers now. I mean, not back then, but maybe not as much, but yeah.
So they're just gathering fingerprints, but nothing showed foul play. So Kelly's mother, Diana, she is actually a chief petty officer with the U.S. Coast Guard, and she was contacted while she was out at sea, and she was told that her daughter was missing. And so the Coast Guard flew her out from Costa Rica home to California, or out here to California. So Diana tells them that she had received an email from Kelly just 2 days prior, and she said the email was telling her just that she loves her and she missed her and that she was going to go to bed. So Kelly would have, like, definitely told someone where she was going. So for her to just completely disappear was extremely out of character. So her mom and her roommate, they're like, this is weird, this is not like her. So detectives actually then get a lead in the case. No, it's fine. I know these microphones are loud.
I'm fidgety.
Yeah, me too. So they get a lead. Kelly's car is found abandoned at the Ontario Mills Mall in Ontario, California. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been to that mall.
I love that mall, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
the Ontario Mills Mall is about 25 miles or about 40 kilometers away from her home.
Okay.
So security at the mall had actually ticketed the vehicle 2 days in a row. So it had been there for a couple days. And at this point, her mom knew that she had not left on her own, but that, like, something must have been something happened to her. Yeah, she was taken. Something, like, she wouldn't just leave her car there,
and her dog and all that.
And the dog,
all
everything.
That stuff adds up.
Yeah. So detectives know that abandoning a vehicle in a large parking lot of a mall, the way that her car was left, is an indicator that something. It's a serious crime. Something happened. Yeah. Someone's trying to hide, this up. So Kelly's car is obviously processed, and they found like everything that was from inside of her purse. It was on the floorboard, like on the passenger side. And her debit card and, like, other items were left behind, and there was, like, no blood or, like, any evidence that a serious or violent crime had taken place in the car.
Yeah.
So they're like, nothing happened in the car. So they still decide to, like, process the whole car. They take fingerprints from the steering wheel, and they take DNA from the steering wheel, obviously, because there's, like, just a million fingerprints. So they take DNA from the steering wheel,
from, like, hoping they got sweaty.
Yeah,
we would be screwed.
Yeah, I know, a sweat would give me away. So
that's how it worked in Point Break.
So they process the steering wheel. They gather DNA from the steering wheel, and they get a hit on that DNA, and it comes back to Kelly's best friend, Kinsey.
Oh.
So, they're thinking, okay, well, best friends. I don't think my best
true.
friend's ever driven my car, though. I don't think she has. I know I'm going to drive her car because she got a new car, so I'm going to drive it when she comes out. But, so they talk to her, and she tells detectives that, like, she doesn't know how her DNA got there. And
that immediately sounds ridiculous.
Like, I don't know. You would have thought that she would just be like, well, I'm her best friend. Yeah, I've driven her car before, or whatever.
Sure, at least once or twice, I bet.
Or I've driven her home when she was too drunk, or, whatever. But no, she's like, I have no idea how it got there. And so they're like, okay, well, and she's like, but I have a tip for you. And you need to look at some of Kelly's other friends. And so she says that Kelly was involved with a group of people that were like known to be criminals, and she's now afraid like something happened to Kelly because she was involved with these people.
Yeah.
And so detectives, get this tip, and they decide, okay, we're going to look into these guys, but we're going to go to her workplace. She worked at Baker's drive-thru. So like where we go to get our fry-normous fries. I love Baker's. And so she talks to some of her coworkers, and Cassandra Ontiveros said that on Saturday, September 13th, she was working, and it was actually, Kelly was supposed to have the day off, but she came in because they were, short-staffed. And Kelly left work around 4 p.m. on Saturday, and Cassandra was one of the last people to see her alive. And so Cassandra believes her cousin, Mike McMillan, and his friend, Eric McLaughlin, who both have criminal records.
McMillan.
McMillan and McLaughlin. It's hard. They're both mixed. So Mike and Eric, we'll just say that. They both have criminal records, and they may have been hanging out with Kelly, so they got to look into them. So apparently, after the two men heard the news, they started bragging about mugging Kelly for money and then burying her body in an orange grove.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Even if it's a lie, it's just so unbelievable to say something so dumb. Because,
yeah, why would you incriminate yourself? It's just they try to look cool. And they were already criminals.
And it's like, even if it's a lie, you're going to get some shit coming up after you for lying. And then you are like, she's missing. Why would you joke about that? It's ridiculous.
So it's kind of like
trying to be hard asses.
So they're like, maybe, okay, so they buried her in Orange Grove. So for anybody that doesn't know, like, Redlands is known for its orange groves.
It smells so good.
Yeah, and you drive. It's sad because a lot of them are getting taken over by warehouses and stuff, but there's still a lot of orange groves. And back in 2003, I mean, I hear Jack talk all the time about, I remember the orange groves.
Yeah, before there's two really big shopping centers that are out there that are brand new, and back then that was all oranges.
Yeah, and so orange groves, that's very vague.
Oh yeah, that's like 500 square miles of orange groves.
Oh my gosh, it's like Redlands was like all orange groves, and I mean, there's even like the brewery, Hangar 24, that's out there.
Oh yeah,
their beer has orange.
You have to drive through like 10 miles of streets that have orange groves on the side to get to it. I remember going on a long drive and passing by that. We were just driving.
Oh, the smell of the orange blossoms. So yeah, so to hear that they're bragging about like, oh, we just bury her in an orange grove. It's not as specific as you think. You're thinking orange groves in 2003. That is hundreds and hundreds
half of Redlands.
Yeah, it is half the city. So so it's very vague, but it's like they got to follow up on this lead, So when detectives look into these two guys, they see they had been arrested multiple times for many different offenses.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum over here.
And they were apparently hardcore gang members, and they were in that lifestyle. And so Mike McMillan was questioned first because he was already in police custody. He was arrested for unrelated charges of like auto theft and burglary. But yeah, he was already there. So they're like, well,
auto theft.
He's here.
Stealing her car.
Yeah, maybe. But it was obvious. It was unrelated. So it was... Yeah, they caught him for something else. So when he was asked about Kelly, he only referred to her as a white girl that worked with Cassandra.
Oh.
So he denied having any knowledge of her disappearance. And so detectives tried saying, like, well, we have information, like, suggesting that you're involved. And so he got angry and just kept saying he had no involvement. So then detectives questioned Eric McLaughlin, and he was talking about his activities over the weekend. And detectives then are more concerned for other people's safety.
Oh, gosh.
Because of what he is confessing to.
Okay.
So, and none of it had to do with Kelly. He said that he had, over the weekend, committed some home invasion robberies and that he was involved in beating and sexually assaulting a person at a, quote, crash pad. So, like a house where they would just crash.
Yeah, like
so
a trap house, like flop house place.
Yeah. So, I did a few home invasions and then a sexual assault.
Again,
they're like, what? So they're like, why is he confessing to all of this?
Yeah.
And
his alibi
is I didn't commit that crime.
Right.
I didn't have anything to do with her disappearance. I don't know where she is because I was off breaking into houses and sexually assaulting someone.
At a party.
Yeah. So detectives then go to both men's last known addresses and 10 different locations, vehicles, and houses is what they were dealing with.
Yeah.
And they were actually able to locate a crash pad, quote unquote crash pad. And this is like we were saying, it's a place where people would like go to crash, like to fall asleep and use drugs and, you know, all that. So
knowing that nobody's going to snitch and call.
Yeah. And so
quote unquote safe there, obviously.
Yeah. It's like the safe house, the crash pad. Yeah. It's where people would usually get high and then sleep there. So both men like were known to go to this place frequently and they went multiple times over the weekend of her disappearance. And so they go in, there's no sign of Kelly, but there's some other like incriminating clues that they find. There was a pair of female jeans that had a blood stain on them. And there were newspaper clippings related to Kelly's disappearance.
Oh, that's weird.
Very weird.
Yeah.
And as we know, it's common for like the criminal of a crime to that committed a crime to keep news clippings of their crimes, kind of like a trophy. And so they're like, this is weird. So the evidence is sent for DNA and fingerprints. And this like shows maybe they're on the right track. They, okay, but why did they commit, they're confessing to these other crimes. Could they can't rule them out, like maybe. So that all they have is like these little pieces of evidence, the circumstantial, it's a lot of circumstantial. So-and-so said you said this and whatever. So detectives are kind of like, this is a little weird. We have some doubts. And both men had been given multiple polygraph tests and they passed every single time. So detectives are wondering, like, why would they confess to this stuff? And then, like, these other crimes that they were committing to are felonies but deny any involvement with her disappearance. It's just so bizarre.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, it is. They're just dumb criminals. They're stupid. And so they knew that, like, they didn't have any solid evidence to link them to the crime. So, and because their confessions to the other crimes, like, of course they remain locked up. They're not letting them go.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I don't know. They might not be the guy. So
it's like the most ridiculous alibis. Like they're admitting to stuff because they couldn't have had anything to do with her because they were doing other illegal crap.
Yeah, which it does make sense because it's like, whoa, I didn't do that, but I did do this. Don't try to tag this on me, kind of thing.
It's just so weird.
Or if like, if say you were shoplifting and someone's like, you killed this person. Whoa, I didn't kill this person. I just shoplifted over the weekend. Yeah. It's kind of that, I think, in their minds as gang members or whatever. It's like, well, I didn't have anything to do with that because they know it's probably going to be bad and they're going to, so they don't want it pinned on them. So, yeah, so they're still locked up because of their crimes, because they're criminals. And obviously there's a lot of media interest. I mean, think about it in 2003 out in Redlands. It is, back then it was still a small community. Redlands wasn't very big. It's gotten a lot bigger now.
Yeah.
But they're, the community was really like coming together to try to find her. And so Kelly's mom and her friends start a search. They were like, we're going to go look. And the Coast Guard was able to actually bring forward 100 volunteers to help. Because remember, her mom worked with the Coast Guard. Missing persons flyers were also distributed and posted. And her mom did like a press conference to try to get someone to like come forward, just anything about her daughter.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks passed by without any sign of Kelly. There's like no sign of her. She's just gone. And then 3 paintballers in San Timoteo Canyon, which is like right by Redlands, Highland area. Jack goes there all the time. Well, he went there all the time. But yeah, so up in...
It's funny because I'm not really familiar with the area.
Yeah, it's just weird as I was like reading it and Jack was sitting next to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that place too. It's crazy. So anyways, there's these 3 paintballers. They're out in San Mateo Canyon and they discover something absolutely awful. A decomposed body is found underneath an old sofa in an orange grove. So San Mateo Canyon also involves orange groves. So this is still out like by Redlands.
The orange groves.
Yeah. So the remains were in a very like pretty remote area in the canyon. And 2 of the guys said they were about 15 feet away and they smelled something awful. So they decided to go up to see where the smell's coming from. And they see what looks like a limb sticking out from underneath the sofa. And the paintballers immediately contacted the Redlands police. And forensic teams are called out, obviously, to the location of the body. And they notice a few things. One of which is that there's no drag marks at the scene, which indicated there's possibly at minimum 2 people in order to pick the couch up, place it on the body. If it was one person, they would have to drag the couch to put it on top of the body.
Yeah.
When the couch was removed, it was discovered that there was a shallow grave that the body was placed into. This grave was only about 13.5 inches or 34.29 centimeters deep. And the right leg of the victim's body was extended outward because of like animal activity. And the killer or killers also left behind the tools that they used to dig the grave. There were 2 separate shovels. This also showed...
How dumb do you have to be?
Exactly. This also showed that there were 2 or more people involved.
Yeah.
And neither shovel has any trace evidence. And the crime scene, however, had one very important clue. About 3.5 inches or 8.89 centimeters below the top of the grave, detectives discover a fired .25 caliber cartridge case. And now, this is not a very common type of weapon. And so obviously they send the casing off to ballistics, and the body is sent to medical examiner Frank Sheridan for autopsy. And he states that the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Remember, it had been a few weeks.
Yeah.
And most of the soft tissue was decomposed. And lab tests show no signs of drug or alcohol. And the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. There were 2 gunshot wounds. So one was like a superficial graze to the head from like the front towards the back, kind of angling. Oops, I hit my headphones trying to show you. So like going up. So it was like a graze to the skull.
Like aiming at her and missed.
Yes. And then the other one. So yeah, this suggests that like she was obviously looking at them because it's from front to back. It goes, across her head. And then the second gunshot wound was to the right side of the head, near the right ear, and that was the shot that killed her. So she was just shot through the head. He couldn't tell, which shot happened first. Can't definitively say, but you could kind of deduct, they probably missed and then got it right. So through dental records, it's confirmed it's Kelly Bullwinkle. Her body was found just 1.5 miles or 2.4 kilometers away from her home. So only 1.5 miles, not far at all. Walking distance from her home. And obviously the community's shocked and scared. And the Redlands police chief was trying to assure people there's no serial killer loose in the community. And, we just have a murder case now. It was just it's a single case. It's not like, you guys should be fine. Of course, everyone's still freaking out. I would too.
Yeah.
There's no motive that they could find.
Of course not.
Yeah, she was fully clothed and her clothing was not disturbed. So no sexual assault.
Oh,
and it looked like it was just simply a murder and not a robbery or, like I said, sexual assault. And the .25 caliber shell casing is the only piece of solid evidence that they have. And so the lab tests at ballistics show unique and distinctive markings on this shell casing. And unfortunately, when it's run through the database, no records come up with a gun that fired that shell.
Which is crazy. I'm sorry, because I'm like, That's big.
Uh-huh.
A 25 millimeter shell, like that. That's like almost a full inch wide.
Like a big pistol.
That's
like,
big.
Yeah, it's big.
That's crazy. I mean, obviously the bullet's not that big.
Yeah.
That could be a craft I talk about, honestly, gunsmithing. But that's big. That's big.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
That's
like a hand cannon.
So it wasn't in any other crime.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, so it's a very unique gun, big gun, and no other crimes that connect it to anything. So they're like, great. So they have to go back to their original suspects, Mike and Eric. But those two men had alibis, and when they give names of who they were with, detectives talk to them and their alibis check out. So they're like, but they said the orange groves, but it's not them. It's they were doing other stuff, and it was actually the rape of another person that provided the DNA to prove the alibi for Mike McMillan and Eric McLaughlin for the weekend.
That's gross, but okay.
Yeah. So Redlands police clear both of them as being involved in her murder. So
wow.
They did other stuff, but they did not have anything to do with her murder. So they're just like, now what? So they decide, okay, we're going to look further into like Kelly's life and begin to look over her emails. And apparently there was a complicated love triangle that brought up some new suspects.
With her friend.
And so they talked to her mom to get some more information. And she said, she was a little concerned about the, quote, goth crowd that Kelly was hanging out with. Now, think back in 2003. This is very, like, emo stage. Goth was, a big thing. Whatever. I had some goth friends. But
I was goth in 2003.
Yeah, I was like, I know, I'm still friends with you. So it was like, maybe look at them. I don't know. So then friends, like, really just said, maybe she was just trying to find a different crowd, fit in somewhere else, get different friends. And so they're looking at her online activity, and she had an online journal, and this helped give detectives a little bit of a better idea on what her goth friends were like right before her murder. It's funny to say goth friends because I'm like, I had goth friends.
Yeah.
And you were. So it's just really funny. But not because it's like, okay, obviously not obviously, but maybe they had something to do with it. Not because they were goth, but it's just like, what is going on? So they start, looking into her online, journal. And there was a lot of bickering going on between them all. Kinsey, as we know, is one of her best friends. And she was someone that Kelly actually looked up to. Because Kinsey was a couple years older than Kelly, and Kelly just kind of did whatever Kinsey did, really looked up to her.
Yeah.
And Kinsey actually said Kelly was like her closest friend and like maybe her only friend, really. She was like, they were best friends. And as we know, their friendship was a little complicated because they were both close to the same guy.
I knew it.
19-year-old Damian Guerrero. So keep in mind, Kinsey's like 20, Damian's 19, and Kelly is 18. So they're young. They're not even drinking age yet. So Damian apparently was really liked. He was goth, and he actually just grew up in typical middle class, and Redlands' parents owned a realty business, and he, for whatever reason, had girls just chasing after him all the time. And he always had a girlfriend. And he was known to be like very confident and a natural leader. So the movie Natural Born Killers was a huge obsession of Damian and Kinsey's, and they thought of themselves as Mickey and Mallory, the two serial killers in the movie. And Kinsey had even given Damian one of two rings that resembled the rings that the couple wore in the movie.
I've seen that movie so many times.
Yeah, I knew it. And so he had this friendship with both Kinsey and Kelly. But he also had a girlfriend named Elodie.
That's a cute name.
I know. I was like, it's like Melody, but Elodie.
Elodie, that's adorable.
And he appeared to like be really close to Elodie, and he was like confident in their relationship, but he would say that Kinsey was his soulmate. So he had his girlfriend and his soulmate that he would hang out with, but also Kelly.
Okay.
And he had actually cheated on Elodie with Kelly. So he had slept with Kelly. He's with Elodie. His soulmate is Kinsey. This is very complicated. Thankfully their names aren't too complicated.
He's playing all these girls.
Like I said, he always had a girlfriend. And
like a young, dumb jerk.
Yeah. He was only 19. So friends thought that like Kelly was falling for Damien, and Kelly continued to try to be friends with Damien after all of this cheating and stuff happened. And Kelly's emails show an email from Elodie to Kelly, so his girlfriend to Kelly, where Elodie says that she knows she had an affair with her boyfriend Damien, and that it has to stop, and if she doesn't leave him alone, something bad is going to happen to her. So detectives know they need to like look closer at all these people. This is a crazy triangle quad thing. The four of these people, it's
like a love octagon.
Yeah, with this guy in the middle. And so it's like, what is happening? So they need to like look at all of this. So they look again at the evidence from Kelly's car, and then they're like, well, Kinsey's DNA was on the steering wheel. Kinsey said she never drove Kelly's car. So like, it's very unlikely that her DNA would be on the steering wheel if she hadn't been in the car, but it's not impossible. Like someone could have had her DNA on their hands and then touched the steering wheel.
That's true.
Yeah. So it like,
I like if you were going to check, if I drove and you checked my steering wheel, it would probably have like I hold my husband's hands all the time.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to like grab it,
Yeah. So it's like why it could have been
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It could have been Damien driving her car and she, like you said, held his hand and touched the steering. Yeah. It's like not completely impossible.
Right.
So Kenzie is questioned, and she admits that she and Damien partied at Kelly's house the night before she disappeared. So detectives interview and fingerprint about like 10 to 15 of Kelly's friends, and they're looking for alibis and any more information that like, do you guys know anything?
Yeah.
And one of her friends say that like earlier in the year, he was riding in Damien's car and he saw Kinsey open the glove box and he saw a small pistol inside, and it was passed from Kinsey to Damien and then back, and it was put back in the glove box. So he saw this gun. So this shows Damien had a gun. And Damien had actually gotten the gun from his brother, who got it from a friend. So they know Damien has a gun. And so when they ask him about it, he says, oh, I fired the gun in the backyard. And like there's several casings recovered from the residence. And they were compared to the ones found in the grave. And they're an exact match.
Of course they are.
Yeah. So a search warrant was granted for Damien Guerrero's residence, and when detectives searched his room, they found an unfired bullet in his jewelry box. And it matched the same manufacture and caliber as the one that was found in the grave. So ballistics compared the unfired bullet to the shell casings, and it was found to come from the same gun because the bullet had been removed from the gun and there were ejection marks that were left on it. So they make exact, like, they just knew it was from the same gun. So Damien Guerrero is asked to come in for questioning, and he comes in voluntarily. There's no fight. And they give him a pad of paper and a pen and ask him to like write down everything that he did from Friday morning until Sunday night. He never mentioned that he had contact with Kelly at all, which Kinsey's saying they partied. And he does state that like he has problems. He's had problems with Kelly, with the whole cheating thing. He says that when he broke up with Elodie, he was seeing Kelly for a little bit, but then he was like, I still like Elodie, so I went back to Elodie and broke it off with Kelly. He then said that the two of them got into an argument in downtown Redlands and kind of caused a scene. And downtown Redlands is like a very small like shopping, like you walk through these little shops and stuff. And so imagine this couple fighting, and well, not couple, but these two people fighting, and kind of caused a scene. And he denies that he had any involvement in Kelly's murder. And when asked about the gun, he says that like he got the gun from his brother, and that he like, I fired it once, And he said that he was afraid that the police were going to stop him and find the gun in his car. So he threw the gun out the window into a storm drain. And so they're like, okay. So they go and look in storm drains, and they can't find anything. So then detectives look at Kinsey again. And so with the circumstantial evidence, she and Damien are being linked to Kelly's murder. It's clear it's got to be the two of them.
Yeah.
So detectives tap both Kinsey and Damien's phone lines. And Kinsey makes a call to a friend. Quote, Kinsey, says, I really fucked up. The friend says, what did you do? Kinsey says, Damien and I shot Kelly. It was an accident.
Oh my God.
And the friend's like, what? So prosecutor,
don't tell me this.
Yeah,
I don't want to know.
So they're, her phone was tapped, so they knew. Now they have what they need to take Kinsey and Damien in. Both are arrested. Mm-hmm. And Elodie is actually cleared of any involvement in Kelly's murder. Elodie had no idea about the murder, and there's no evidence showing that she had any involvement with the murder. Mm-hmm. And Kinsey Nordman admits to killing Kelly Bullwinkle. Oh. She says that Kelly's murder was a joke gone wrong. Oh, no. She says that she and Damien had just planned to, scare her but not kill her.
Scare her away.
Yeah, scare her to get away from Damien.
Wave the gun. Yeah. You better stay away from my man.
Stay away. So, in the interview, I'm going to quote what she says. So this is recorded. You can watch it. She says, we had just been talking about scaring her, I guess, for a while. And I don't even know why we were being stupid. And I was supposed to take her down there on Saturday. And we were supposed to wait for him to get off work and come meet us down there. And he was just going to bring a gun to scare her. And that was going to be it. So that's what she's saying. Mm-hmm. So Damien and Kinsey had gone to the place with Kelly where they had dug the grave the night before. She said that she and Damien dug the hole Friday night. She said that the shovel was left there. And then she said that on Saturday night, when they took Kelly to the grave that they dug the night before, Kelly laughed and said, oh, like a fresh shovel. And she said they were all kind of laughing. And Kinsey said that she had her back turned and heard a loud bang. She then said that Kelly was on the ground and she says, I didn't think anything was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And she didn't think that he was going to actually shoot her. So in this interview, Kinsey says, and then she was moving and making these noises. I thought she was still alive. She then says that she took the gun from Damien and tried to shoot Kelly with the gun. She said that it wouldn't fire immediately, so she gave it back to Damien. He did something with it and handed it back to her. She then took the gun and shot Kelly. She says she wanted her to die because she didn't want her to suffer. Mm-hmm. So this goes along with what was found of the bullet graze. It was probably his. She probably fell down, probably hurt.
Yeah.
If it was on her skull. Probably, yeah. And so she's moaning and what is happening? You're thinking I got shot in the head. And then Kinsey's the one that shot her and killed her. Mm. So after Kelly was shot, Kinsey grabbed Kelly's feet and the both of them carried her to the grave. They buried her and put an old couch over it. They then took her car to the Ontario Mills Mall, ate at Denny's, and then watched a movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know exactly where that Denny's is still there.
So, yeah, so bothered by what they had just done. And Kinsey, she has no emotion. She's, this was done in cold blood.
She,
no remorse,
the average person probably would have, vomited. There's no way I'd want to eat. Mm-hmm. If it was an accident, if it was an accident, you're going to lose your shit.
You're going to freak out. But if this was premeditated, you're thinking about it, you're planning for it, you're ready for it. You're in this, we're like the, just like in the movie, we're going to act it out or whatever. I bet you that's what it was. So
both Nikki and Mallory Knox. Mm-hmm.
So she had no remorse. So both, at this point, 21-year-old Kinsey Norman and 20-year-old Damien Guerrero are charged with first-degree murder and tried together. Yeah. So both defendants had their own jury. Mm-hmm. So everything was done at the same time, but the jury had to determine the guilt of only one person. So Kinsey had hers, Damien had his jury. But everything was all done at once. And this also meant that if there were certain parts of the trial and evidence that wasn't specific to the one defendant, the jury had to leave. They couldn't hear specific if it only pertained. It's weird. So it was super complicated.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
The courtroom was packed. There's cameras. There's, it was kind of a big deal, then. And prosecution lays out the case pretty straightforward. Kelly was lured down to the canyon by Kinsey and Damien. They had dug the hole, dug the grave the day before. They had the shovels and even had a change of clothes with them. Clearly planned.
Yeah, and you don't need clothes to scare someone. Come
exactly.
on now.
They knew they were going to kill her.
Right.
And the motive presented was that it was a thrill kill. Defense then says that it was a joke gone wrong. And defense explains by saying, quote, You know it's a joke, only because the way that they dug the grave. The grave is only a foot deep, and it's about 58 inches to 51 inches long, so it's not a real grave.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what?
You can bury someone under anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's very clear this was planned.
Mm-hmm.
The area was carefully planned out. They knew this location. They knew it was remote.
Yeah.
The murder weapon actually was never found. They Damien did leave, took him on a wild goose chase, like, oh, maybe check here or here, and streets were dug up. They were really looking for this gun.
Yeah.
They never found it. So with the two juries deliberating separately, Kinsey's jury is the first to reach their verdict, and she was found guilty of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to 45 years to life. 25 years to life was the sentence for the first-degree murder. I don't know why I keep saying murder, and then the extra 20 was for the use of a handgun.
Gotcha.
So
because they're minors.
She's the oldest. She's 21 at this time.
Oh,
they're all adults. Remember, 18, 19, 20.
But when they committed the crime, I don't think they were
18, 19, 20. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. But yeah, they were all adults. So, and the jurors were appalled that she didn't call 911, but instead grabbed the gun and fired the second shot to kill her. It's instead of, oh my gosh, I can't believe you shot her, call 911, we need to get help.
This was just supposed to be a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's sentenced to 45 years to life. And Damien Guerrero's jury came back with a very different outcome. The jury came back 11-1 in favor of convicting Damien for first-degree murder and all of the special circumstances. And so it was a mistrial because it has to be unanimous.
Yeah.
And
which is so weird to me. Why are you even asking my opinion if I have to agree with everybody?
Yeah. No, that's the thing. And so it results in a mistrial if not everyone agrees. So one person didn't. The jury actually, they were saying the jury was so frustrated. A lot of them were crying. I can't even imagine that frustration of just imagine deliberating and this one person's I don't know, I can't.
You fucking jerk. You ruined it.
So 3.5 years later, Damien's new trial is about to start. And prosecutor and defending attorney end up coming to an agreement to plead to second-degree murder, which ended up giving him a 15 years to life sentence. Oh. And her family had to they were just I want to be done with it.
For sure.
That's fine. They didn't want to go through another trial. So they knew that he was going to have to serve time for what he had done. And the detectives and officers, when I'm watching the show, they were very affected by the crime, and you can hear it in their voice and see it on their face, choking up, and it was hard for them. Kelly was so young, it was just her life was taken just
not
to
that
carry
any
out
of
a
these
sick
make
fantasy.
sense,
I know,
but it's just it's so ridiculous.
These two people,
and dumb.
I guarantee you, it was they just wanted to be like the serial killers in the movie, and they're we're gonna do it and let's kill Kelly. It's sick. So Kenzie Nordman, now 39, has been serving her sentence at the California Institute for Women in Chino, California since May 2005.
Cow fart smell.
Yeah, by my mom. I was telling my mom about this morning, and I was she's right down the street from you. Well, not down the street, but very close. Very close. And I remember in high school having lockdowns because someone would escape from the prison or whatever. Yeah. So she's been there since May 2005. She's still, she's got her 45 years to life. So Damien Matthew Guerrero, who has been incarcerated at Chuckwalla Valley State Prison in Blythe since 2008. Ready for this?
When's he getting out?
He was granted parole last week.
Oh, fuck.
I know. I was shocked this entire case. Yeah. He was granted parole last week as the date. We are recording today. What is it? The 25th?
Is it
July 26th.
Yeah.
So we are recording today as July 26th because we record in advance. I know this isn't coming out till September.
Yeah.
So as of today, July 26th, last week, he was granted parole. Now, Governor Gavin Newsom for California had actually blocked his release before. And so, he was granted. And he is scheduled to be released because remember, it's you're granted parole, but you're not released immediately. He is scheduled to be released at the time that we are recording this tomorrow. Thursday, July 27th.
Oh, what?
Yes. Yeah, he'll be out tomorrow.
He better get the fuck out of this area.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is so scary and weird.
Was shocked.
How many times do we do these cases and then they have like weird lines date up where like you and I are not doing this on purpose?
No.
One of my older cases, I was like, it's right now.
Yes.
I'm doing this right when this is like all lining up. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was shocked because I had a few different cases I wanted to do, but I really like learning about a case as I research it because then it gets your gears turning. It's like, ooh, I want to find out more. I want to find this article. I want to find that article. So I watched this show on Discovery Plus. It's usually what I do. It's called Solved. This episode came out in 2008. I will link it in the sources and watch it. I pretty much just summed up everything. So it's like, I'm not plagiarizing. I watched it and it's, how else can you tell the story? But I watched this episode and I was sitting next to Jack, like I said, and I was like, oh my gosh, Redlands. I was like, what? Because he can't hear because I have headphones on. I was like, oh my gosh, Chino, like that's right down the street. And I was like, okay, so this episode came out in 2008. And then after I take my notes, I take more notes. I go in and I fill in. I want to find this article.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I just typed in Kelly Bullwinkle. And Google popped up
because it's like right now,
and it said 4 hours ago, and I was like, "What?" So the article I'm linking was literally as I was doing my research.
It was popping up.
It was published. Like it was that. It was he's being released tomorrow or on Thursday, the 27th of July. Yeah, I was like,
so
what are the chances?
Tomorrow.
So what? Yeah, our tomorrow. Yours is he's been out for a while, but
That's so scary.
And what is crazy
how many murderers are literally walking around us? That's the insane part.
I know. And the fact that it's like he's, if he's going to come back out, his family's, out in
and he's not even that much older than us.
No.
He's like just 40.
He's 40. No, wait. She's 39. He's 38. Yeah, he's younger than my husband. Just a little bit older than us. That's scary. You hope he learned his lesson. And you hope that's the true story of what happened, that he...
fake dug a grave to scare someone.
I don't know, but
it's crazy to me that he was able to like lose the gun. That never happens, really. I mean,
yeah. And what is really crazy about this, and I feel like it was meant to be this story today. Usually, like I said, what I do is I'll just scroll through random shows, ones that I haven't seen. I'll go back to ones that I like, the way that they're told. And this one popped up, I go through the true crime and I'm like, oh, okay, this, Solved. Okay, I'll scroll through. There's like 3 seasons on there. And I'm just looking at the picture, and I'm not really reading until I like look at the picture, I see the title, and then I'm like reading and okay, I haven't heard of that. And so this one, her face, I stopped and I was like, her. I don't know what this is, but it's like she spoke to me, like, tell my story. And I'm not saying that like it's just it for me. It was like, whoa, okay, it was no brainer. I didn't even read it. I vague little thing. I was like, okay, press play, got my laptop up.
Yeah.
Jack's sitting next to me and I'm just like, whoa, like this is crazy. It got crazier. And I was like, I have goosebumps right now. But yeah, and just the fact that it was then like tomorrow,
local,
very
right now,
very local,
that's
happening
insane.
to us right now, and we had no idea.
Well, let's hope that he probably, I think typically when you leave prison for those kinds of sentences, you have to go into transitional housing for quite a while. You usually leave and are still on probation.
A couple houses down from you, that used to be one. Yeah, because we called him wheelchair guy. He would have a brown bag with the 40 in it or whatever, and he was in a wheelchair, and he would just go up and down the street, and he was like super drunk. But I think a lot of because it's so close to a school, they had to kind of like move that house elsewhere. They couldn't use it for that, and I think it's rented out. Or that's the house that sold. The one with the nice grass.
Right there.
Yeah, it was right there. And so
crazy.
we had crazy people, and it was people that had just gone out of prison, and it was that transitional like house.
Do you remember on Grandma's Street, your guys' house? Did you know that dark brown house was that? Like,
which dark brown house?
Not okay. So if you're standing on the front porch of your front porch,
house? Okay,
it would
my
be
house, like
13,
it
would have been not the little duplexes next to it.
Okay.
But the one next to it.
Oh,
the
yes,
brown
yes,
one.
yeah. I did know that.
Yeah, that one was a transitional living, which is like they need to exist. But
Yeah,
it's just crazy
it was nothing but problems here, and I think I had to call a couple times because of some men peeing on the street, like just by the bushes and stuff, and so there was a lot of like nudity happening and drinking and fights, and
which
the cops were here all the time.
Everything they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and so they shut that down. But yeah, now I think a family lives there, and they're the ones with the nice grass. But yeah, if that was still, it would probably be a house like that. Like, could you imagine? Oh my gosh. So I don't know, but because he got 15 years to life, and he's been in for 20, just under 20 years, right? Because it was 2000. So yeah, I can't do my math right now, but yeah. So that is the
thanks for that
story.
nightmare.
I know, and like I warned everybody, this is a long one. We're at an hour and 20, and
that's okay.
but the story needed to be told, and it's very, very real and close. Like I said, close to home, and yeah. I found like her MySpace, but it didn't have like pictures or anything because MySpace, I think, was like you can't see anything anymore. But when I Googled, it was like her, and you could see like her closest friends and stuff. I didn't see Kinsey or Damien on there, but yeah, I read her obituary and stuff, and yeah, it's just, yeah, she was young, she's really, really pretty, and I think that's why it's just like she spoke to me. I was like, I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna find out and tell your story. So. Yeah, anyways, so with that, stay crafty.
And not crimey.
Bye.